Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Rebecca Keppel. Today's video is another episode of my Support Small Card Making Businesses series, and today I get to share a brand new company with you called Kraftgali. They reached out to me and asked if I'd like to try some of their products, and I'm here to tell you that they are an awesome new company with fabulous quality stamps and dies. Since they sent me two different SlimLine card dies, I'm going to focus on SlimLine cards today. But they also sent me a beautiful floral stamp, so I have a fun technique for that, and an awesome alpha die, so a couple of tips and tricks for that as well. Before we jump into cards, let me share the stamps and dies that I was working with. First up is this SlimLine die set called Square Grid Windows. You get 3 SlimLine stitched rectangle dies and a windows die that can be used with any of the stitched rectangles. Next is the Stitched Scallops 2-in-1 die set that includes 3 scallop dies and 2 thin stitched rectangle dies. This is the lowercase letters die set, and I love how you get the letters and the little frames around them. And this is the Beautiful Flowers stamp set, which is a gorgeously detailed 4x6 stamp set with a stunning floral arrangement and beautiful script sentiments. For this first card, I'm going to combine the stamp set Beautiful Flowers with the SlimLine die set Square Grid Windows. I'm going to share how I Copic colored the flowers and leaves, and I have a fun partial dimension technique on this card as well. I'm stamping the floral arrangement inside my original MISTI, and I'm using Gina K Designs Amalgam ink because I'm going to be Copic coloring this. I am stamping on Neenah Solar White. It's 110 pound, the classic Crest, and the piece that I've cut is 8.5 by 5.5, and I'm kind of placing the floral arrangement in the middle so that I can cut it down later. Here are the red Copic markers that I'm going to be using. I start out with my lightest color and I fill in most of one petal. I try to leave a couple of spots white without any marker at all. Next, I go to my darkest color, which here is R29, and I'm just going to do some flicks from the center of the flower out and from the tip of the flower in, just where the black lines of this stamp set have showed you that there's going to be the darkest color there. So you can see how that looks when it's just those two colors. And then I'm going to go to my middle color, which is R24, and I'm going to take that darkest marker out a little bit. I'm going to extend the dark color out just a touch, just a little bit more than I had the R29. And you can see how that looks there. Next, I'm going to go to the next medium color, which I can't remember what it was. Was it R11? And I'm going to soften the edges of everything that I have dark right now. So I am just going over top and making sure that I'm blending out those harsh edges. Okay, here's R11. That is the lightest color, and then I'm going to fill in everything that is open. For the spots that are white, I really don't want to color back and forth. I just want to flick over them once so that they stay the lightest on the petal. For the leaves, I am going to use these 3 green colors, and basically the leaves are so tiny here that there's not a whole lot of blending that you can do. But I do the same exact process, start with the lightest color, flick some darkest color on there, blend out that with the medium color, then go back in and blend everything with the lightest color again. And here's what I ended up with. Now I'm going to take a white gel pen and just add some details. This is not very scientific. I am just going into the lightest areas and adding some flicks of white gel pen. I really like this white gel pen so far, and I'm going to link it in the description below, and I'll give you more information about it later after I've used it some more. Okay, I'm going to temporarily adhere the Square Grids die down to the cardstock with some purple tape from Thermweb, and then when I lift it off, I have some cut out pieces, those little squares that I'm going to set aside because we are going to use them, and then I have this window piece that I am going to trim down with my Tim Holtz trimmer here, just so that I can have different margins. The top and bottom are pretty tight and the sides are a little bit thicker. That's why I'm not using a die here. I'm going to stamp the sentiment with some Versamark ink. So of course I first treated the paper with anti-static powder tool, and then I'm really going to ink up the sentiment. It is a very very fine, beautiful sentiment. So I want to make sure I get a Versamark all over it and then embossing powder all over it. And I cannot believe how clearly that script stamped. I was super impressed. And then you can see after I heat emboss it with some rose gold, it's absolutely beautiful. I'm going to put a little bit of tape runner on the back of this window here. If you struggle getting tape runner on those little thin edges, you could use liquid glue, but I just was in a hurry, I guess, and didn't feel like pulling out the liquid glue for this one. It was easy enough to get that tape runner on the smallest edges on the top and the bottom. Now I am going to, like a puzzle, because I did not keep them in order, I'm going to put them back together inside the grid windows. So this is pretty easy, although it took me a second for that last one there. And once I have that all where it needs to be, I am going to take some foam squares and pop up those windows. So what you're going to end up having is partial dimension on the areas where the windows are. And it just has a really cool effect that looks just different, I think, than just having the regular panel there. Okay, to make my card base, I just put the panel into my score pal for a second to see how wide I need it to be. I have an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock there. Then I score it down and put it into my trimmer with the fold facing out so that I trim it down, and now I have a card base. Super, super simple way to make those SlimLine card bases. I'm going to use that same tape runner to adhere the panel down to the card base, and look at all that dimension on those little windows there. I did want to add, of course, some Nouveau crystal drops here. So I basically like to at least squeeze out one drop on the side before I go to my card, just to make sure nothing is going to splurt out, which has been known to happen to me if I squeeze a little too hard and it's resisting. And that completes this card. For this next card, I want to share with you how many die cuts you actually get from each die in the Stitched Scallops 2-in-1. I am going to be ink blending, so I'm die cutting these all out on some Canson Bristol Smooth. So here's the largest die that comes in the set. And you can see you get this scallop border, which has the scallops on the inside. Then you get that middle piece, and then you get the inside piece, which is a rectangle with the scallops and stitching on the outside. And I absolutely love these dies. It comes in 3 different sizes, so you get 3 dies, but you get 3 cuts out of each die, which I think is absolutely brilliant and gives you a lot of room to do some fun things. You also get those 2 rectangles at the top. They do have a stitch around the border. They would be great for some of those sentiments as well. Okay, so I'm going to be doing some ink blending here on all of the pieces, actually, except for a couple I think I just leave white. But for most of them, I'm going to be doing some ink blending. I'm going to be using pinks, oranges, and yellows on this card. And you can see that I'm doing a gradient of colors from lightest down to darkest, and I'm using at least 2 different inks per rectangle, and then I'm blending them together. So I get like maybe 2/3 of one rectangle in a darker color, and then I blend it out to the lighter color at the top. I like to do this by actually usually starting with the lighter color, but this one I flipped it. So it just depends on what's easier for you, what makes the most sense. You can go back in multiple times to make sure that things are really blended out. And then I decided that I wanted to do these little die cut borders as well. So to do those, I'm just kind of rotating the sponge on the die cut because it is pretty thin and I didn't want to tear it, and I'm pouncing it down. I'm going to use my Ultra Bond this time instead of the tape runner. I am using my liquid adhesive because these pieces are pretty thin, and I thought it would be easier to go around with a thin layer of liquid adhesive. So this one is white. It's like the scallops on the inside border. This one, look at how skinny this is, but I was able to go around and just do some little dots here and there and some thin lines of liquid adhesive. And again, it's kind of like puzzle pieces. So this piece pops right into the scallop on the inside piece, and everything kind of just goes down from there. So again, this piece pops right inside there, and then you start with the next size. And the next size, again, I am going to leave the scallop on the inside white, and I'm just going to try and keep a same margin on the tops and sides here when I place that in there. And then again, from here on down, the medium pieces will all fit together like puzzle pieces. So each die set has 3 pieces that fit together like a puzzle. And then if you go down and use all of them, you have to just kind of create an even margin when you're doing the next set of dies. So this time I am still using the liquid adhesive on the larger rectangle with the scallops. And the reason is, as I found with Distress Oxides especially, I think because it has kind of that chalky finish and it sits on the paper, the tape runner doesn't always stick. So you need something a little bit stronger. So I found that the Ultra Bond from Thermoweb works the best for me. I really like it whether I'm adhering a thin die cut like this down, or if I am using it on a thicker rectangle like this, especially when I'm adhering it to a Distress Oxide ink blended panel. And this is how all the dies look together when you die cut them out and use them all together like a puzzle. Now I want to combine those fun SlimLine card dies with the lowercase letters Essentials Alpha die. I love how you get each letter as well as the frame around each letter in this die set. Because those frames are going to be so thin, I am using some iCraft Easy Cut adhesive, which is a thin double layer adhesive sheet. I'm going to place it on the back of some gold foil cardstock, and then I'm just going to trim off anything that was excess. And when I die cut my letters out, you can see that I get this thin gold frame as well as the thick inside of that frame in a gold sticker. So I am going to just use the frames for this card and just adhere the letters for hello. I use my trick of placing the card panel inside my score pal and then scoring at the width that I need, and then just trimming off the excess of this 8.5 by 11 piece of white cardstock to create my base. I got a little ink on the outside edge there of that white scallop with the inside scallop. So I'm going to put a little bit of the Ultra Bond on the white scallop piece, and then I'm going to lay a new white scallop piece on top of that. And the reason that I'm doing the glue on the panel is because I don't want to put my new scallop piece down, move it around, and then end up smearing the ink again. So sometimes liquid glue can reactivate that Distress Oxide, and I didn't want that to happen. But look at how pretty it looks now. I absolutely love those layers. So now I just need to use some tape runner to adhere the card panel down to the card base, and then of course a little bit of Tonic Studios Nouveau Crystal Drops, and that's another SlimLine card done. Super easy with these dies. For the next one, I am going to cut out first a rectangle with the stitched rectangle and then place the square grids inside to cut out those windows. And I'm combining it this time with the scalloped edge. So I'm placing the scallop with the interior scallop onto a rectangle piece of green cardstock, and then I'm going to adhere the windows that we also die cut with the rectangle, stitched rectangle on top of that, so that we can combine the windows, the stitched rectangles, and the scallops, which are stitched as well, all in one card. And I think that that has a really pretty kind of delicate, cute look to it. I'm also going to combine it with the alphas, and this time I'm just going to use the interior of the alpha that we had cut before we used the outline. Now I'm using the interior, and because it had iCraft adhesive behind it, it's just a peel and stick kind of thing. So we made our own hello stickers. Just put that on a card base, and that is pretty much good to go. For this next card, I'm going to create one ink blended rainbow panel, and I'm going to use it to make 2 different cards. So I'm starting with the largest scalloped rectangle, and I'm ink blending my favorite Distress Oxide inks along the whole panel. And I'm using my Waffle Flower Mini Media Mat to ink blend on because it's nice and smooth, so it makes it easy to create a smooth blend. And it's really easy to clean off those Distress Oxides when you're done. Next, I'm going to take some Dina Wakley Media Gloss Spray in white. I'm going to unscrew the top and then just flick some white bits of paint all over my panel. I really like the way that that looks. It's just something a little bit different. Now I'm going to temporarily adhere the grid to that rainbow panel and cut it out. Next, I'm going to cut out a large stitched rectangle and lay that rainbow grid on top. And it's got the white windows sticking out. For the other card, I am going to die cut and adhere the white scalloped rectangle. And this is the one that's got the scallop facing in, and you can see I used some tape runner to adhere that down. And I'm going to adhere a white grid on the inside of that on some blue cardstock. Once that's done, I am going to figure out the puzzle pieces again and then add some tape runner behind them. This time I'm not popping them up. I wanted them flat, but I thought it was really cool how you could still see the blend even though it was just the little squares in those windows there. I love how you can create two totally different looking cards from one ink blended rainbow panel. Next, I'm going to use the Gina K Designs Amalgam ink to stamp my sentiment in between the windows. And I love this ink both for Copic coloring and for sentiment stamping because it is nice and crisp and dark black. I am going to use some outlines that I cut of silver glitter cardstock with the alpha dies, and then I'm going to fill them in with gold metallic cardstock. And so I use the Easy Cut adhesive on both just to make it easier for myself. It's called Easy Cut for a reason, right? So that I could just peel and stick. So I really highly recommend anytime you have a thin die cut like this to grab some sheets of Easy Cut adhesive. It just is so much easier than trying to adhere a little teeny tiny bit of liquid glue behind them there. So my first thought was to say thank you in the windows, but I didn't really like the way that was going to look. So I have the letters, one to the left of the middle pane there and then one to the right going down the whole window. I wasn't really sure how it was going to turn out, but I like that it took up the whole card. That was kind of the point of this, was to have the thanks sentiment take up that whole card. And I did take out those tiny little pieces and put them inside the A. And then to fill in some of that white space of the windows there, I am using some enamel dots in a rainbow of colors here. And these are also from Waffle Flower from their Up and Running Rainbow Dots collection. Now I just need to add both of these panels that I created down to card bases, same way I always do. And then I have two different cards that we created with one ink blended panel. I had so much fun playing with these new stamps and dies from Kraftgali, and I think that they're super high quality and amazing designs. I really look forward to seeing everything this company does in the future. If you're interested in checking out Kraftgali or their stamps and dies, I will link to them down in the YouTube description box below. Before you head out today, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell so you can be notified anytime I have a new video available. As always, I appreciate every minute that you spend with me. Thank you so much for being here. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. Look at the hair,